All right, welcome in to a new edition of Carps Corner. Got the mailbag coming up for you today. We got Toledo coming up this weekend. Next show will preview everything that's going on with Toledo and some of the other big college football games. You've got Penn State traveling to Auburn, which is big for the Big Ten. You've got Michigan State and Washington, which is going to be huge. And let me just talk about this, and we'll start with this out of the gate. And there are people out there who don't care about how the rest of the Big Ten does. And I will say this, like Ohio State can ultimately win a national championship without the rest of the Big Ten being good. But when the rest of the Big Ten is good, it helps Ohio State significantly as far as perception and as far as seeding for the playoff. And right now it's 1-4. When it gets to be 1-12, it'll be even more important and more vital. But getting that one seed is huge. And don't think that it's automatically just bequeathed to Florida. Or not, don't think it's automatically just bequeathed to Alabama because they lost, or Georgia now that they look to be the number one team. And so it's huge. When you start talking about Ohio State's competition, teams within the Big Ten, that they win their non-conference games, and then the big non-conference team that Ohio State plays, that they win their games. That Notre Dame victory isn't looking as good now with the fact that they lost to Marshall. Wisconsin losing to Washington State isn't helping the cause. It's great that Michigan is ranked 4th. It's awesome that Michigan State is ranked 11th. It's great that Penn State is still undefeated. That's why that game against Washington will be so big. It's not good that Iowa lost to Iowa State. That's bad. That's a future opponent for Ohio State. Because at the end of the year, they'd be like, hey, they played 6 ranked opponents and beat them all. And that helps. And that goes into the pool. It goes into the pot, if you will, of all the information. And so a lot of people, Big Ten country, Ohio State fans, like, I want Michigan to lose every game. No, you want Michigan to roll into this thing this year at 11-0 and the top 4 seed in college football. Top 3, maybe even better. You want it to be a top 5 matchup. It's important. You want to beat them, but you want that to be there. You want Wisconsin to be ranked. Maybe they slide back in. Maybe they don't. We'll see before they play them, which is going to be a night game, which is great, by the way. We'll get into that in a minute. You need Iowa to somehow find an offense to get going, because that's supposed to be one of the other big games. Like maybe Rutgers ends up being a big game. They beat Boston College. They seem to kind of have things pointed in the right direction. But you want your teams on your schedule to be perceived as good, and you need somebody in the West to go out there and put something together for once. Because beating Michigan's awesome. You beat the 3rd or 4th, 5th ranked team in the country, great. And then all of a sudden you get the Big Ten championship and you're playing the 17th ranked team. That's not good. That's not good. There's not a single team in the West ranked right now. All 4 from the Big Ten are all in the East. So you needed an Iowa. You needed a Wisconsin, maybe a Minnesota, whoever it is. Wisconsin's probably the easiest because they have the most national prominence right now. And so if they were cruising and rolling and undefeated, that would be a lot easier for them to be there. So if they lose to Washington State, it stinks. And it really, 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 really hurts the conference. Not great. Not great at all. So we'll preview and talk about some of the other big games, but keep your eye on Penn State at Auburn. Penn State wins that game. Auburn's not that good. I don't think Penn State's that great. But you beat an SEC team on the road, folks. There's a perception that comes with that the team is pretty darn good. You need that win. And also you need Michigan State to continue to toe the water because they're right on the outside of the top 10. So whoever wins Michigan State in a couple weeks, both of those teams should stay pretty high up there. And that's good because you got to play them both. And you want them to have as few losses this year as possible for perception of strength of schedule. Let's be real. I want to say the Fiesta Bowl and I think the Peach Bowl, I want to say, are the semifinals this year. I know this is really early, but Ohio State's we're going to want to go west. Ohio State fills it up at the Fiesta Bowl. They will bring all the fans from the West Coast there. So that'll be good. In no circumstance are they going to want to stay in Atlanta. So first or second doesn't matter, but it matters for the opponent that you play because right now it looks like there's 3 pretty darn good teams, even though Bama had a rough week. After that, I'm not sure. Clemson looks human. Michigan hasn't played anybody. A&M lost. Notre Dame lost. I mean, I'm not sure. Oklahoma State, is that what we're rolling with here? Utah got beat by Florida. Florida got beat by Kentucky. Trying to roll through and figure this thing out. Baylor lost. Is Oklahoma that good? Like, there's a whole lot there. When you start looking at where these teams are ranked, I mean, Oklahoma, I think, is 6th. I don't know how good they are. So there's a lot that goes into this, but you want as many Big Ten teams ranked at the top as you can possibly get. And that's going to be a critical factor when you start looking at games this weekend. Just understand that, folks. I know we all love to see Michigan lose. I love to see them lose once a year. I laughed when they lost to App State. That was funny. That was good. But once a year to Ohio State, that's the game you want them to lose because you want it to be worth a lot. And when it's worth a lot, it's more painful on the defeat end. Now, Toledo is going to be a night game, 7 o'clock. Wisconsin, also going to be a night game. And this is my theory with night games. Night games at Ohio Stadium and on the road are reserved for big games. You've got big non-conference games. Notre Dame, here or there. Texas, Miami, USC. Those are the ones. Those are the big games. The big non-conference game. Put that on primetime. Then you have your Michigan, which is always noon, so that doesn't apply. We'll carve that out. Then you have your Wisconsins, your Iowas, your Michigan States, your Penn States. They're traditionally really good. Hopefully one day Nebraska will ultimately get there. When Minnesota's coming off a nice season, that's great. If Northwestern's good, like I don't need to see Rutgers, unless they're good, be a night game. I don't need to see Toledo be a night game. Those are supposed to be special. Put those at noon. We can get it out of the way. And if you love college football, you can sit there, kick back, and enjoy the rest of the slate. That's my opinion about how night games should be doled out. I'm not complaining. The 3 of the first 4 at night, I think that's great. But also, the game should act accordingly. The time slot should be comparable with the level of interest and the GSF, the give a crap factor about the game. You can't elevate a game that isn't great tonight and just expect people to love it. And I know there's other people say it gives me juice and this and that. Players are excited. No, players aren't excited to play games against subpar competition at night. They want it to be equitable. They want it to be prime time. They want it to be big time. You want big brands sitting there going against it. At home, hostile environment for your opposition, and on the road, you're going into an incredibly hostile environment to go get a win. Everybody else makes Ohio State the night game. You make the big games night games in the shoe. And we'll see with the new TV deal how that ultimately shakes out. But I love Wisconsin as a night game, even though they lost, because they're worthy. Toledo, put that at noon. So I take my kids, take my family. The players can get done. They can watch some other college football. And it gives the coaches the chance to get a jump start on the week. So that will probably be the last home night game for Ohio State this year because Iowa's not going to be that great. Thought they had a chance to do it. Michigan State, Penn State, both on the road. And Michigan, always a nooner. And that's how it should be. So take on night games. I mentioned decent, not a great slate this weekend in college football. So we'll talk a little bit about that in preview. But we got the mailbag. Answering your questions. When we start looking at this, always throw it out there on Twitter. If you have any other questions, like I said, throw them here in the comments section. I'll try to get to them. I'll answer them throughout some of these different shows that I put together. First question, do I see Cade Stover coming back for another year? That's a great question. First year at tight end. He's playing pretty well, dominating blocker. I think we've seen more of him in the pass game than we thought. 35-yard, 30-yard reception, whatever it was last week. Couple of pair of catches. Tried to give him the ball again, and actually they guarded him instead of Emeka Ibuka, and they got that over the top to him. Had a couple catches in the first game against Notre Dame, I think 3. So he's proving to be a receiving threat. He's a great blocker. There's a lot of things there to love. I think some of it is how good, not to pretend nobody's thinking, but a lot of it, I think, comes down to how good. You win a national championship? Yeah, maybe you can walk, especially if a lot of other guys are leaving. You feel like there's unfinished business and you can still improve and help your draft stock, well, then maybe you come back. Second question here. Notre Dame's lost to Marshall. Do you feel as confident about Ohio State? I do. I think Notre Dame was emotionally spent after they lost to Ohio State. And this is what I warned about last week with Arkansas State. You go from playing essentially in the Super Bowl paratroopers, LeBron James, Jason Tatum, 29, whatever it was, NFL players on the sideline. You got the 02 20-year reunion there, 100-year anniversary of Ohio State football, fireworks, everything else. And then all of a sudden you're playing a noon game against Arkansas State, late arriving crowd. You're going to still have the same juice. So I think that's what Notre Dame suffered from a little bit. It's Marshall, it's coming in, but it was their home opener. And Marshall looked like the better team that day. I don't worry about Ohio State because I know what these guys are made of. I know how intense they are. Watching Jim Knowles coach on defense, watching Ryan, and Kevin Wilson, Hartline, these guys get together on offense. Like, they're going to make sure this team is ready to go. And you've heard Ryan say this a lot. It's not about who they play. He brought up the analogy about the concert pianist, whether they're playing in Madison Square Garden or some dive bar, they're going out there and performing it as well as they can. It's the process, it's the procedures of what you do as a person, as a team. That's what matters, not where you're playing and who you're playing. So it doesn't concern me that much because I think Notre Dame, they're probably 8 or 9 win team this year. That was a fluky loss to Marshall, but Marshall was the better team on that day, and they looked it. Concerned with the lack of turnovers the defense is putting out there. You love the aggression. You'd like to think you'd produce some takeaways. Well, I'll tell you this. You had 12 TFLs, had a number of sacks. It's tough. You practice stripping the football to working on turnovers in practice, tip drill, all these things. And coaches always say this, turnovers come in bunches. You can't predict when they're going to happen. But if you continue to do the right things, you don't leave receivers open. You have all your run fits filled up. You get good pressure. You have good moves in your rush. You stay in your rush lanes. You make sure that you're doing everything you're supposed to do. When you have good players and ball hawks and you study film, you know where the ball is going, you will eventually get those turnovers. They come in bunches. They will happen. I'm not overly concerned about it. I'm glad the defense is playing good football. And not that you get bailed out by turnovers, but sometimes, a quarterback will throw a bad pick, a running back will cough a ball. There's a tip ball that's turned over, and it disguises, it masks some of the deficiencies or issues because you may be they may be getting driven on, and all of a sudden the turnover kind of saves the drive. And so I'd rather play good, solid defense, get a lot of sacks, a lot of TFLs. The turnovers will come. Areas I'm hoping the Buckeyes will tighten up and refine against Toledo as you prepare for a tougher Big Ten schedule going forward. Penalties, number one. Talked about it last episode. Penalties. Last show, penalties, both sides. Offense game one more, defense game two, some pre-snap penalties, and then some discipline penalties as far as not being a knucklehead post-play. You can get that corrected. It's not the end of the world. They're working on that stuff. And I guarantee you there's zero tolerance for it right now in practice with Ryan Day. That's the main thing. And who am I looking to as an impact player, both sides of the ball? Keep the Buckeyes playoff bound. You're going to get Jackson back. He's going to have a massive impact. I think Julian Fleming, I waxed poetically about him before the season. He committed himself to football in a way that only comes with the maturation process when you're a big-time 5-star guy. You come in and you really buckle down and you saw the progress in camp. So I'm excited to see him get out there. And I think you've seen a lot of the playmakers now on the defensive side. I mean, you've watched Mike Hall inside. You've watched Chambers and Eichenberg and what they're able to do. You've seen some of the guys on the edge. Perimeter, Denzel Burke needs to elevate his game. He needs to play as he did last year. He's very talented, very skilled. It's in there. It's just a matter of discipline and focus. And I know that he will ultimately get there as well because he was one of the ball hawks last year. What's your second sport and who do you root for? That's interesting. I'm football 1A, 1B. I watched a lot of other sports outside of that. Who do I cheer for? I like watching, men's and women's tennis. I cheer for the Americans. That's fun. My daughter plays tennis, so I like that. I don't watch as much NBA anymore. I'm an Ohio guy, so I want to see the Cavs do well. Used to be a big Celtics fan growing up. Not really a huge baseball guy. I mean, I cheer for my friends in the NFL, former Buckeyes, guys I played with. I just want to see people have success because if you don't have success in football or in any professional sport, you ultimately get fired. I see Caden Curry getting more snaps. I do. I think Caden Curry has shown enough in practice and during camp. You're going to continue to see him in there. Like I said, he's not a guy who is get off the bus, all-star looking dude like Zach Harrison, or Sawyer or JT Tuimoloau. but he is a football player. That's the reason he was a highly recruited guy. His film is elite. His technique is sound. He is always around the ball in camp, getting sacks, creating fumbles, recovering fumbles. He's always around. He will be a guy that is going to continue to get more time. But you got to remember, he's a true freshman, and it's tough to come in and play that. They're playing a lot of young guys right now, and so he'll get out there. You got to remember too. I mean, they've got, like I said, JTT, Zach, Jack, Mike Hall. Like, there's a lot of dudes. They're rotating a bunch of guys up there, but I see Caden Curry getting more snaps. He's going to continue to play, continue to improve and expand his role in a pretty big way. And then one of the other questions here, as we kind of wrap this up, what is the most important influential position outside of quarterback? Quarterback's young. You could argue it's the center, making a lot of calls up front. Defensively, if you have an elite pass rusher up front, you can impact a game in tough ways. It used to always be the edge guy. Aaron Donald changed that. You saw what Mike Hall was able to do. So elite rushers, I would put in that category. If you don't have an elite rusher, like a crazy great rusher up front, they can penetrate all the time, I would say it's either one of your linebackers or your safeties, because those are the guys that get everybody lined up. Make sure you're in the right snap. Make sure that the gaps are lined up front. Secondary, make sure everybody's covered, and they're the guys that are the brains behind the operation. As you look at the Rock Hill Ronnie back there, you look at Proctor, you look at Lathan Ransom, you look at Steele, you look at Tommy, like those guys now are more vocal. They're better than they've ever been. And this last one, why is AJ Hawk so toxic? And is Tommy Eichenberg the best LB since you and AJ? Maybe Shazier was on y'all's levels, but Ike is looking good. Well, I appreciate you saying that. Ryan Shazier is a tremendous player. Would have had an even better NFL career if it wasn't cut short. Was great at Ohio State. AJ was a phenomenal player. I always judge guys off of him when I watch him run around off the ball guys that kind of move around back and forth and can do a little more. I kind of look at myself and judge them off that, and just because I've seen, that's all the film that I watched in college. So those are the guys I base people off of, whether they're better or worse. You look at what Shazier could do. He could do a lot of things really, really well. We've had a number of good linebackers that have come through. Raekwon McMillan, Joshua Perry was pretty good. You look at Pete Warner in the NFL, Baron Browning, like all these guys, everybody's different. Being a linebacker now is almost like a running back. You can be off the ball guy, you can be a rush guy, a little of both, all these different things. Ike is playing great. Tommy Eichenberg is playing awesome. I'm so happy. And Steel Chambers is playing great. Like both those guys, that's what's great, is they're roommates, they're good friends, and they play together in tandem. And that's what it reminds me kind of AJ and myself, like different personality wise, but when you see, and I told these guys, you need to be able, and Cody Simon in there as well, when you look at something and it's loud, you don't have time to always talk. You have to look at it, be able to give a head nod, and know that you're thinking what I'm thinking, and this is how we're going to attack this offense and this formation, whatever play it is out of what we're doing. And so that's so big, and it's awesome to see, man. It warms my heart. It's awesome. So that's our little mailbag. Get us going on midweek here. We'll wrap everything up on Friday, get you prepared for the game, get it rocking for Toledo. Nice little night game, which should be a nooner, but we'll take what we can get. Please continue to subscribe, like, comment, share this with friends, continue to grow it. We're trying to take this thing to the next level. So until next time, I'll talk to you soon.